Q Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the National Podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @CuandReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com. That is INFORMATION@CuandReview.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
This is from the National on Friday the 12th of July, from the comments section. Indie movement is at risk of becoming a reenactment society. This article is written by Jonathan Shafi. Maybe it's just me, but doesn't the response to the election result in Scotland from the SNP and the wider movement feel a little muted? Yes, there have been some fairly public spats between leading figures in the party as the blame game heats up. But outside of that, there's been something of a shrug of the shoulders at what has just happened. The SNP are down to just 9 seats, having lost 500,000 of their 2019 voters. Not only that, Labour are in confident mood, already charting a course for the 2026 Holyrood election. Meanwhile, leading figures from Better Together, such as Blair McDougall and Douglas Alexander, are in Parliament, and indeed at the heart of government. Keir Starmer obviously has a strategy too when it comes to Scotland, as his quick in-person visits to meet the First Minister John Swinney and Scottish Labour leader Anas Sarwar indicate. And all of this without Labour having altered their position on Scottish self-determination. The truth is that while the result was on the more disastrous end of the polling projections, it didn't come as a shock to any discerning observer. The SNP campaign was pretty lacklustre, and the party has lost the army of activists and clarity of message it once had. That's what happens when people feel taken for granted, their conference decisions regularly overridden, and when there is so little in the way of both direction and belief. There is a deeper analysis to be conducted here, but that is for another day. For now, we can lay out the proximate reasons for the poor showing. The high-profile police investigation into party finances, which resulted in the SNP's former chief executive being charged in connection with embezzlement, damaged trust, while donations dried up. The position on independence lacked both zeal and credibility in the minds of voters. The churn in leadership and open divisions don't help either. This list goes on, but it's safe to say Swinney was never going to be able to turn it around, as I argued in previous columns. Then there is the response from what remains of a fragmented and demoralised movement, which offered the standard fare. The cause is bigger than any party. The movement must unite. The dream will never die. Except, for now at least, the dream is dead. There is no way to a referendum, no political force with enough support in the population to turn an election result into direct negotiations for independence, and no prospectus that offers coherence. Just consider how catastrophic this state of affairs is compared to the promise of the post-2014 surge in political activism around the SNP. Perhaps it is little wonder, considering the SNP leadership shunned the mass demonstrations which emerged for independence some years ago. How they must now wish they had not so cheaply dislocated the party from its core base of active support. Despite years of unrivalled dominance in the Scottish Parliament throughout the Sturgeon era, the delivery on policy and transformational reform was absent to any serious extent. So much could have been achieved, but tangible outcomes for working-class Scots were traded for headline grabbing and spin. Had there been a solid foundation in this regard, the SNP could have stood on firmer ground, even if the party was in a mess over the national question. Thus we have a combination of factors: declining trust, failures of domestic governance, the loss of activism and funds, the end of the road for the gold standard referendum, the coming and going of leaders, which, taken together, mount up to nothing short of an endemic political crisis. None of this will be solved with a barnstorming speech at SNP conference, or a hastily brought together convention of the existing independence groups. In 10 years it is the same voices and faces that represent the idea of independence. That is not to deride anyone, but just to point out that even on that basic front there is little in the way of expansion. The danger for supporters of Scottish autonomy is that the cause becomes something of a reenactment society. Even retaining the use of the term yes or yesser is a comforting and familiar throwback with narrowing resonance. Anyone who didn't take part in 2014 won't relate to this. In any event, it makes no sense when a referendum isn't on the table. I have been very critical of the SNP leadership throughout the years, but not of those tens of thousands of committed independence campaigners. The people who march, who resolutely conduct what outreach they can, and who found a sense of agency in 2014, it is those individuals who have been let down by a leadership more concerned with how they are viewed by the political establishment than anyone else. But among this, the misplaced loyalty, especially to Nicola Sturgeon, blunted the critical and strategic thinking of the movement. When people were told there was a plan, busily taking shape behind the scenes, this was largely accepted. Perhaps out of desperation, following the no vote, that can be forgiven. What is more difficult to square is the idea that the SNP hierarchy kept the myth going for electoral purposes, while failing to rise to the hopes and demands of the 2014 movement when it came to domestic policy. So, here we are, a Scotland whose wind resources are sold off at rock-bottom prices to BP and Shell, where the most right-wing incarnation of Brexit, free ports, have been gladly signed off, and now with a resurgent Labour Party which opposes Scotland's right to decide. 10 short years ago, this would have been laughed out of the pub had you raised such a prediction. It goes to show that anything can happen in politics, but that it is always worth raising your head above the parapet and telling it like it is. Only then there can be a process of rebuilding. That is now a decades-long project. That article was written by Jonathan Shafi. This is from The National, on Friday the 12th of July, from the news section. Scotland beats UK and Europe in record number of foreign investment projects. This article is written by Lucy Jackson. Scotland won a record number of foreign direct investment projects in 2023, beating both the UK and Europe. The EY's annual Scotland Attractiveness Survey, published on Thursday, found that Scotland won 142 foreign direct investments (FDI) projects last year, a 12.7% rise from the previous record annual figure of 126, achieved in 2022. This was the 5th consecutive year of increase in Scotland, compared to Europe, which saw a 4% year-on-year decline, the continent's lowest since 2020, with 5,694 projects, and the UK, where projects rose by just 6%. The analysis showed that utility supply is the leading sector in Scotland, with 40 projects secured for 2023, and a rise of 81.8% on the 22 secured in the previous year. Digital technology, business services and transport and logistics each secured 14 projects. In the top 10 cities table by number of FDI wins last year outside of London, Edinburgh is placed second with 32 projects, Glasgow is in fourth position with 25, and Aberdeen is in eighth spot with 13 wins. The US remained the single biggest originator of FDI projects in Scotland, accounting for 27, that's 19% of projects during 2023, the data showed. Meanwhile, projects from Germany doubled to a decade high of 20, making it the second largest source of projects into Scotland. Ali Scott, EY Scotland Managing Partner, said, "Scotland has demonstrated yet another very strong performance, both in attracting FDI and retaining the confidence of investors. Utilities, including renewable energy, plays a strong role in Scotland's FDI growth story, as the country leads in sustainability and low-carbon power generation. This offers a real competitive advantage on the back of the ScotWind leasing rounds. But will it create the critical momentum required to see another impressive yield in the years ahead?" Meanwhile, Deputy First Minister and Economy Secretary Kate Forbes said, "Attracting inward investment is critical to economic growth and driving forward strategic objectives in key sectors. These results show a record performance, with Scotland once again outpacing the UK as a whole and the European Union when it comes to securing foreign direct investment projects, delivering on the actions and priorities that we have set out in government. From being at the forefront of the energy transition to the rapidly emerging cutting-edge technologies, we have an enormous opportunity to capitalise even further. We will continue to work with our economic development agencies as part of a Team Scotland approach to attracting foreign direct investment and bringing more high-quality jobs across Scotland." That article was written by Lucy Jackson. This is from The National on Friday the 12th of July, from the news section. Scottish families impacted by two-child benefit cap rises to 26,000. This article is written by Alastair Ferguson. Poverty campaigners have demanded the UK government urgently scraps the two-child benefit cap after figures revealed 26,000 families were impacted in Scotland. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has faced pressure to abolish the policy before he even took on the top job. But the latest figures from the Department for Work and Pensions, DWP, showed 1,840 more Scottish households are restricted by the 2017 policy, which limits child tax credit and universal credit to the first two children in most circumstances. Exemptions are available, including cases of multiple births, adoption, and, controversially, where the parent can prove the child was conceived non-consensually, the so-called rape clause. The data published on Thursday showed 200 Scottish households were impacted by the rape clause as of 2024, compared to 3,100 on a UK-wide basis. Statistics also showed that on a UK-wide basis, 1.6 million children were impacted by the policy as of April this year. Claire Telfer, head of Scotland at Save the Children Scotland, said, "It's an outrage that 26,000 families in Scotland are being denied vital support because of the unfair two-child limit, a rise of nearly 2,000 families since last year. More and more children across the country will continue to suffer just because they have siblings, unless the UK government acts now. No child should be cut off from support they so desperately need. The two-child limit is cruel and needs to be scrapped immediately to prevent families from facing hardship and destitution. David Hilferty, spokesperson for Citizens Advice Scotland, said, "The two-child limit severs the link between need and support and fails to account for the fluid nature of real lives, leaving families on the edge." We see this day after day across the Scottish CAB, Citizens Advice Bureau, network. We've already called on the new government to end this policy as a matter of urgency to improve the lives of some of the most vulnerable people in our society. Scottish Liberal Democrat MP Wendy Chamberlain said, "The Conservative government trapped hundreds of thousands of children in poverty with their cruel and counterproductive two-child limit. That includes 26,000 households in Scotland. The Liberal Democrats will keep campaigning to scrap it, which would be the quickest and most cost-effective way to lift children out of poverty, with huge long-term benefits for our society and for our economy." Work and Pensions Secretary of State Liz Kendall MP, "Too many children are growing up in poverty, and this is a stain on our society. We will work to give every child the best start in life by delivering our manifesto commitment to implement an ambitious strategy to reduce child poverty. I will hold critical meetings with charities and experts next week to get this urgent work underway." That article was written by Alistair Ferguson. This is from The National on Friday the 12th of July, from the news section. Scottish search and rescue dog receives top award for service. This article is written by Lucy Jackson. Scotland's first underwater sniffer dog, who has worked on many high-profile police investigations, has been given a posthumous award for outstanding duty to devotion during 11 years of service. Springer Spaniel Barra, who sadly died earlier this year, aged 14, has become the 43rd recipient of the PDSA Order of Merit, coined by the charity as the animal's equivalent of an OBE. Alongside his handler Ian Marshall, 57, Barra helped locate missing people on waterways across the UK, and was often requested personally by families who were desperate to find their loved ones. Thanks to Barra's incredible work, many families have been reunited with the bodies of their loved ones and have been able to lay them to rest. Commenting on the award, John McLaughlin, Director General at PDSA, said, "We're incredibly proud to be honouring Barra posthumously with the PDSA Order of Merit. Barra's outstanding devotion to duty and service to society was demonstrated time and time again throughout his decade-long career, and his exceptional skills went above and beyond that of normal companionship, making him a very worthy recipient of the PDSA Order of Merit." Awarding the PDSA Order of Merit to Barra posthumously is a fitting tribute to his lifetime of dedication and hard work. Barra's owner, Marshall, added, "I am absolutely over the moon that Barra has received the PDSA Order of Merit posthumously. We never did any of this for recognition in the form of awards or medals. We did it to help families who needed us. But, nonetheless, we are delighted to see Barra's commitment to search and recovery being recognised by PDSA in this way." Barra was an incredible search and rescue dog, but also a loving and important member of our family. We had an incredible bond, and I miss him every day. As a volunteer Coast Guard in Scotland, Marshall was moved by the amount of incidents taking place on the River Clyde and wanted to do something to help some of the families affected. English Springer Spaniel Barra was born in Wales on the 15th of March 2010 as part of a litter from a local police dog. Marshall saw the post online and travelled to Wales to meet him. In 2011, after less than a year of training with Mick Swindles of Search Dogs UK and Dave Jones of International Rescue Training Centre Wales, Barra qualified as Scotland's first underwater sniffer dog. Upon qualifying, the Springer Spaniel moved to his forever home in Luss, Scotland with Marshall, where his career began. A year later, Marshall recruited his second Springer Spaniel, Eriskay, in the same way, and the trio made up voluntary organisation K9 Search and Recovery. Barra worked all over the UK, including on many high-profile national investigations, where desperate families personally requested him to come on board due to his esteemed reputation. One significant example of Barra's inspirational work is when he found the body of a missing person in the River Clyde in 2013. A 30-year-old male had been missing for 3.5 weeks, but had sadly passed away. Barra helped to locate him, enabling his family to come to terms with his death and allowing them to hold a funeral to celebrate his life. After an incredible 11-year career, Barra retired in 2022 due to mobility issues, and sadly, after 2 years enjoying retirement, Barra passed away in May 2024. Marshall shared the news on the K9 Search and Recovery Scotland's Facebook page, adding, "Barra devoted his entire life to helping others, right up to the age of 13 years, which is remarkable. Barra and I had a special bond, and I can't imagine life without him." That article was written by Lucy Jackson. This is from The National on Friday the 12th of July, from the Culture section. Scottish seaweed crisps to hit the shelves of major supermarket. This article is written by Gregor Young. A Scottish seaweed crisp company is set to have its products stocked in a major supermarket. The Wick-based company Shaw, the Scottish seaweed company, has partnered with Asda to launch all 4 flavours of its locally harvested seaweed crisps in its stores across Scotland over the summer. A company which started in 2020 has already been awarded 2 Great Taste Awards for its seaweed crisps, which come in sweet sriracha, Peking duck, lightly salted and smoky barbecue flavours. All the seaweed used in their products is harvested sustainably by hand on the coastline around Wick. Initially, around 50,000 packets of crisps will be available in Scotland's 62 Asda stores. The company's founder, Keith Patterson, said the crisps also deliver a nutritional boost when compared to regular potato-based crisps. This listing across all Scottish Asda stores is a huge opportunity to get our brand of delicious and healthier alternative to regular crisps in front of new customers, he said. Our crisp range is so unique because seaweed already has a naturally salty umami flavour, which we were able to build on to deliver a truly great tasting snack, which has the additional benefits of being lower in fat and sodium, and delivers great nutritional boosts such as iodine, fibre, and antioxidants. Innovation has always been at the core of the company, and through research we found that we could produce seaweed crisps in a way that was kind to the planet, and that's right down to the recyclable packaging. On top of that, the seaweed we harvest from Wick requires 0 input to grow, so no fertiliser, feed or fresh water is used, making it one of the most sustainable food options available. We can't wait to hear what Asda customers think of the range. Ashley Connolly, local buying manager for Asda Scotland, added, "I'm confident Asda shoppers will love Shaw crisps, a unique, locally sourced product that we're really proud to stock in Asda stores this summer. The innovation of local suppliers in Scotland is incredible, and Shaw is no exception. We're thrilled to be able to offer a sustainable, plant-based option to our customers for a great tasting snack on the go with added health benefits. That article was written by Gregor Young. This is from The National on Friday the 12th of July, from the news section. Stephen Flynn slates Labour oil and gas cliff edge. This article is written by Steph Braun. Stephen Flynn has accused Labour of creating a cliff edge for oil and gas workers amid confusion over new drilling. Reports suggested on Thursday morning Energy Secretary Ed Miliband had ordered an immediate ban on new oil and gas licences in the North Sea. The Telegraph had asked the party about a number of outstanding drilling applications from the 33rd offshore oil and gas licensing round last year, to which a spokesperson for Miliband responded, "We will not issue new licences to explore new fields and will not revoke existing oil and gas licences. We will manage existing fields for the entirety of their lifespan." When it was reported that this was an immediate ban on new drilling, the UK government denied these reports but maintained that Labour's manifesto commitment was to put an end to new oil and gas licences. The SNP's Westminster leader, Flynn, said Labour need to clear up the confusion and clarify their position. The Aberdeen South MP told The National, "The Labour Party promised workers that there would be no cliff edge, but I fear this is precisely that, and is ultimately our net zero future, our economy and our workforce in the North East who will pay the heaviest price. We need an evidence-based approach when it comes to offshore licensing, and we need to ensure we retain jobs in our energy sector to deliver the just transition. But this cliff edge approach risks all of that, and I'll be seeking an early meeting with Ed Miliband in this regard." The reports came about after hundreds of businesses joined a campaign last month against Labour's policy of refusing to grant new oil and gas licences in the North Sea. Trade union Unite launched a "No Ban Without a Plan" movement. An open letter was signed by businesses from North East Scotland, Falkirk and Bowness, after Keir Starmer's party said it would not hand out new licences but would continue with any already in operation. Sharon Graham, Unite General Secretary, told The National, "It is quite frankly irresponsible for Labour to keep ploughing ahead with the guillotine ban of new oil and gas licences when there is no clear plan for jobs. We simply cannot let go of one rope before we have hold of another. Until we have clear plans and, more importantly, investment, we should not be turning off the taps. In a less stable world, we cannot rely on imports nor offshore our carbon responsibilities." In a debate earlier this year, Miliband made his opposition to oil and gas clear by saying, "Oil and gas licensing will not reduce energy costs for households and businesses, will not enhance energy security, and offers no plan for the future of the UK's offshore energy communities. It will ensure the UK remains at the mercy of petrostates and dictators who control fossil fuel markets, and is entirely incompatible with the UK's international climate change commitments." The Department for Energy Security and Net Zero described reports of an immediate ban on new drilling as a complete fabrication, but added, "As previously stated, we will not issue new licences to explore new fields. We will also not revoke existing oil and gas licences and will manage existing fields for the entirety of their lifespan. We are working with the North Sea Transition Authority to ensure a fair and balanced transition in the North Sea." That article was written by Steph Braun.
From The National, Monday the 15th of July, from the politics section, BBC called out over wild headline on SNP and two-child benefit cap. Report by Xander Elliards. SNP figures have criticised the BBC after it reported that the party had joined Labour MPs in pushing against the two-child benefit cap. The policy, which was brought into effect by the Tories in 2017, limits the benefits a person can receive for their third or subsequent children unless it can prove certain conditions such as that the child was the result of rape. The cap was controversial from the outset and the SNP have opposed it for nearly a decade. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has supported the cap and said that the top priority for his Labour government is economic growth. However, a BBC News article on Monday was headlined, SNP join push to scrap two-child benefit cap. It reported, the SNP has announced plans to join Labour rebels in trying to force the government to scrap the two-child benefit cap. SNP figures criticised the BBC for the framing of the story. An SNP activist said, join is a bit of a mischaracterisation, and highlighted past SNP MPs' work in the area, leading former Glasgow Central MP Alison Thielis to say she had been working to scrap the two-child limit since it was first proposed in the 2015 budget. Calling out the headline specifically, Thielis added, join? Perhaps if the BBC had paid more attention back when the SNP were leading the opposition to the two-child limit and the rape clause in 2015, and regularly calling it to scrap it for the past 9 years, perhaps we wouldn't still have to be fighting against it now. SNP councillor Alex Kerr shared past examples of the party opposing the two-child cap. In a post shared by Scottish Government Minister Christina McKelvey, Kerr added, I'm struggling to see what possible justification BBC politics had for missing the SNP's early and vociferous campaigning to scrap the two-child cap since its introduction. Marie Hunter, a former SNP councillor and close Nicola Sturgeon ally, wrote, join is wild. The SNP voted against the two-child cap when it was introduced, has campaigned against it ever since, and abolishing it was a manifesto commitment. We haven't joined anyone. On Monday, SNP Westminster leader Stephen Flynn wrote to Scottish Labour group leader Anna Sarwar, asking him to instruct his MPs to support an amendment to the King's speech aimed at ending the cap. Sarwar has also spoken out against the cap in a bid to pressure his UK Labour bosses to act, but it seems unlikely he will be able to influence Scottish Labour MPs to go against Starmer at Westminster. Flynn said the two-child cap is pushing thousands of Scottish children into poverty and ending it is the bare minimum required of the new government. His letter to the Scottish Labour leader claimed the Tory two-child cap between the Labour two-child cap once Starmer stepped through the door of Downing Street. Flynn said it would be simple for the UK government to scrap the cap immediately, but added this was a political choice and requires politicians across parties to demand better. Figures published last week by the Department for Work and Pensions showed there were 1.6 million children living in households affected by the cap as of April this year, up from 1.5 million to April 2023. Of these, 52% of children were in households with 3 children, 29% in households with 4 children, and 19% in households with 5 or more children. Last month, before becoming Prime Minister, Starmer said he would scrap the two-child limit in an ideal world, but added that we haven't got the resources to do it at the moment. The Resolution Foundation has said that abolishing the two-child limit would cost the government somewhere between £2.5 billion and £3.6 billion in 2024-25, but that such costs are low compared to the harm that the policy causes. The BBC has been approached for comment, and that article was written by Xander Eliards. From the National, Tuesday the 16th of July, from the Politics section. Clive Lewis calls for change to MP oath to King after legal threat. Report by Xander Eliards. The perverse rule that requires MPs to swear allegiance to the King and all of his heirs or face losing their seat in Parliament should be changed, campaigners say. It comes after Labour MP Clive Lewis revealed he had been forced to retake the oath after initially omitting to swear allegiance to all of the monarch's heirs and successors. Lewis had only sworn the oath under protest the first time around, and has now called for the legal ceremony to be changed. He wrote on social media, after omitting to swear allegiance to King Charles' heirs and successors last week, I've had to take the oath again in order to sit in the House of Commons. The majority of the public are committed to democracy, and so I hope one day MPs can swear an oath based on those values. Lewis further shared a letter of warning he had received, adding, "If I had not re-sworn the oath, then based on a law from 1866 I could be fined, subjected to legal action, and my seat shall be vacated in the same manner as if I were dead." This should change, so MPs have the choice to swear allegiance to our constituents and democracy. It is understood that the Labour MP was the first ever called on to retake the oath. Campaign Group Republic seconded Lewis's calls for a renewed swearing-in system, calling the current one outdated and highlighting that the Pledge of Allegiance to royal heirs included Prince Andrew. Republic Chief Executive Graham Smith said, "Millions of people in the UK support the abolition of the monarchy. Whether they become MPs, police officers or join the armed services, their allegiance will always be to their country and fellow citizens, not an unelected head of state. The oath is particularly perverse in Parliament, where the right to take your seat should come only from the votes cast on election day. To be told you must swear allegiance to a monarch is outdated nonsense that flies in the face of freedom of expression." He added, "The vast majority of people in the UK support democracy and free speech. The slightly hysterical reaction to Clive's oath-taking last week was confined to a small minority in the right. Clearly, it's time to introduce a choice, where MPs can choose to swear their allegiance either to the King or to their country and constituents. This should not be a controversial notion in a democratic society." In all, it took Westminster 3 days to swear in the 643 MPs who will take their seats. Former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn could be heard to call the parliamentary tradition a load of nonsense while waiting to be sworn in. Any changes to the oath would require legislation from the UK government. And that report was by Xander Elliards. From the National, Monday the 15th of July, from the news section, Euros, Cologne an official move for Scott's twin after Tartan Army charm. Article written by Gregor Young. A German city has made the first official move to twin with a city in Scotland after being impressed by the Tartan Army during the Euros campaign. Cologne, where Scotland played their second match of the Euros against Switzerland, has seen a motion put to council looking to twin with either Glasgow, Edinburgh or Aberdeen. Oliver Seek, Cologne Council's deputy leader, said the city would be happy to twin with the whole of Scotland if it could, the Scottish Sun reported. Seek said, "There is the shared love of football between the Scots and the people of Cologne, which unites both fan groups in a unique way, which was impressively demonstrated this summer. And the bagpipes are now used in Cologne music by many bands and carnival societies." He added, "We have put forward 3 Scottish cities as suggestions, but we'd be more than happy to twin our city with the whole of Scotland." Visit Cologne Tourism Chief Dr. Jurgen Amann previously praised Scottish fans for having won the hearts of the people of Cologne. He added, "We'll remember the Tartan Army for a long time to come. No Scotland, no party." In June, Cologne Mayor Ulrich Recker praised the Scottish fans and said they were always welcome to come back to the city. Also in June, a poll run by German media outlet RTL found Scots officially voted as the best supporters at the Euro 2024 competition. The team fared less well, failing to progress beyond the group stages after recording 2 losses and a draw. And that report was by Gregor Young. From the National, Tuesday the 16th of July, from the news section, former SNP Equalities officer jailed for sexual and physical assaults. Report by Ross Hunter. A former SNP Equalities officer has been jailed for 6 years after inflicting unimaginable trauma with a string of sexual and physical assaults. Cameron Downing, 24, attacked 7 people at a variety of locations in Scotland over a 5-year period between 2016 and 2021. Downing, from Edinburgh, sexually assaulted one of his victims on various occasions in early 2021. The former drama student also sent a partner threatening messages, demanded he share his social media passwords, and threatened to falsely accuse him of rape if he did not stay in a sexual relationship with him. Last month, a jury at the High Court in Edinburgh found Downing guilty of a total of 10 charges, including sexual and physical assault and domestic abuse. Sentencing him at the same court on Tuesday, Judge Alison Stirling told Downing he had the capacity to cause physical and sexual harm as well as psychological distress. She said, "You have distorted views regarding intimate partner violence, and you have shown no remorse or insight into how your actions may have affected your victim." The judge added, "Your offences are likely to have caused significant psychological and physical harm to all of your victims, and their psychological recovery from your actions could be prolonged." She said Downing showed a hostility towards women, lack of concern for others, sexual preoccupation and deviant sexual preference, and that he was at high risk of reoffending. Downing, dressed in a black suit, showed no reaction as the sentence was handed down, and blew kisses to the public gallery as he was led from the dock. Michael Meehan KC, representing Downing, told the court he accepted the seriousness of his client's offences and said the court should have regard to the impact on the victims. He added his client had been the subject of homophobic and derogatory remarks while at school, and he should be sentenced as a young person in line with his immaturity and capacity for rehabilitation. Speaking after the sentencing, Katrina Parks, Scotland's Procurator Fiscal for the High Court Sexual Offending, said, "Cameron Downing is a dangerous individual whose predatory and manipulative behaviour has inflicted unimaginable trauma. It is thanks to the bravery and courage of his victims that this prosecution has been possible. I would urge any victim of a similar crime not to suffer in silence, but to report it and seek support. You will be listened to, and we will use every tool available to us in seeking justice." Downing was imprisoned for 6 years with a further 3 years on licence, and was also made the subject of an indefinite non-harassment order in respect of one of the complainers. He will also be placed on the Sex Offenders Register indefinitely. And that report was by Ross Hunter. From the National, Monday the 15th of July, from the news section, exclusive series, Palestinian describes returning to Gaza for first time in 9 months. Report by James Walker. A Palestinian Oxfam worker has described how it felt returning to Gaza for the first time in 9 months. The latest in her Diaries from Gaza series, Wassam Mushtaha said it was a deeply emotional experience returning to northern Gaza with the help of various UN agencies. "When we first entered the first area, the area was filled with destruction. Buildings were destroyed everywhere," the aid worker said. "The streets were covered in sewage and sand, pollution was everywhere, and the air carried a sense of despair everywhere." Mushtaha added that many people were struggling to find food and clean water. "I went through a market and we only found some canned foods at high prices that most people can't access due to a lack of cash," he said. "One of the most striking moments was meeting Oxfam teams for the first time. I met with the 3 colleagues who stayed in Gaza and didn't leave since the beginning of the war. It was a mix of emotion, happiness to be back and connect with the team, but overwhelming sadness at the massive destruction. So many hopes and livelihoods were shattered and the loss of people was deeply felt. The visit was only for 3 hours and we returned back the same day. However, if I'm talking about my feelings about the impact of the war, about the situation of people in Gaza, maybe I need 33 years to talk about what I saw during the 3 years in terms of infrastructure, in terms of need, in terms of suffering, in terms of sadness, in terms of hopelessness, in terms of everything." Mushtaha said that what inspired him the most was the people of Gaza. In spite of all the challenges that they faced during this massive war, they're still strong. They are fighting to stay alive. They're fighting to access food and water, he said. They are creating innovative ideas to overcome the situation in Gaza. They are doing everything to protect themselves and their children. And the article was written by James Walker and read by me, Ian McKenna. From the National, Monday the 15th of July, from the news section, Scottish Council slated after school bus loses 2 wheels. Report by Joe Sullivan. North Lanarkshire Council has been slated by a regulator after two wheels came off a school bus during a school run in October 2023. An inquiry by the UK's most senior traffic commissioner was launched after the incident, which happened with no children on board. It heavily referenced a DVSA investigation, which found that severe rusting and wear had brought the bus's wheel nuts to a level of damage where they were susceptible to breaking. The inquiry also found that some inspection records for council school buses were missing and that others had been completed improperly. Commissioner Richard Turfitt chided the council's fleet management team, saying that it should not have proved necessary for a traffic commissioner to alert a local authority to the basic concept of health and safety legislation and management. This could so easily have resulted in tragedy, and the management of safety and the authority would have found to be lacking. Any repeat or failure to meet the conditions on the permits is likely to result in their removal. The Commissioner elected to allow the Council to keep its vehicle operation licence under several conditions, including undergoing a safety audit and generating monthly reports about its school bus fleet. Despite the Council being permitted to keep its vehicle operation permits, it is continuing with long-standing plans to scrap most of its school bus services. Parents have strongly opposed the plans and have criticised the Council's level of public engagement when making the decision. The Red-Blue coalition in the Council's administration saw Labour councillors intervene at a meeting in 2024 to stop the convener from allowing an SNP proposed vote on an extra school transport funding. A North Lanarkshire school bus experienced a severe mechanical issue in 2017, which saw it flip over and run down an embankment, injuring 22 pupils. Other findings referenced in the inquiry included several incidences of keys being left inside school buses, senior management unaware of the many aspects of the school bus fleet, and a bus seat that was loose from the floor. You can find out more information about the inquiry at www.government.government/publications/decision-for-north-lanarkshire-council. North Lanarkshire Council has been contacted for comment. And that article was written by Joe Sullivan. From the National, Tuesday the 16th of July, from the news section, woman accused of throwing milkshake on Nigel Farage denies assault. Report by Ross Hunter. A young woman accused of throwing a milkshake over Nigel Farage has denied assault by beating and criminal damage. The Reform UK leader was doused with what appeared to have been McDonald's banana milkshake as he left the Moon and Starfish Witherspoon pub in Clacton-on-Sea in Essex on June the 4th. Farage, who is now Clacton MP, had earlier addressed his supporters at a rally in the seaside town during the general election campaign. The veteran Brexiteer, 60, was left with the yellow liquid splattered across his dark blue suit. Victoria Thomas Bowen, 25, of St Othis Road in the seaside town, pleaded not guilty to both charges at Westminster Magistrates Court on Tuesday. Prosecutors say £30 of criminal damage was caused to a jacket belonging to James Wolfenden. Caroline Liggins, partner at Hodge, Jones and Allen, the law firm representing Bowen, said, "My client strongly protests her innocence and looks forward to fighting these unjust charges in court." Bowen was released on unconditional bail to appear before the same court for trial on October 21st. If proved, the offence of assaulting by beating, contrary to Section 39 of the Criminal Justice Act 1988, carries a maximum penalty of 6 months custody and or an unlimited fine. Being convicted of the criminal damage charge could lead to 3 months custody and or a maximum fine of £2,500. Last month, 28-year-old Josh Greeley admitted throwing a coffee cup and another item at Farage as he campaigned on his battle bus in Barnsley, South Yorkshire, on Tuesday, June 11th. Greeley, of Damsbrook Drive, Clown, Derbyshire, appeared before a district judge at Barnsley Magistrates Court where he pleaded guilty to a public order offence. He will be sentenced on August 28th at the same court. During a campaign walkabout in Newcastle in 2019, Farage had a banana and salted caramel milkshake thrown at him. Milkshaking, the act of dousing public figures in milkshake, was officially recognised by Collins Dictionary the same year. And that report was by Ross Hunter, and it was read by me, Ian McKenna. From the National, Tuesday the 16th of July, from the Culture section. Bob Dylan's Scottish shows legend to play Edinburgh gigs in 2024. By Lucy Jackson. Bob Dylan has announced a 2024 phone-free UK tour, including 2 nights in Scotland. The 83-year-old music legend will play 10 shows across venues in Edinburgh, London, Liverpool, Nottingham, Wolverhampton and Bournemouth in November. The shows will be phone-free and people will be asked to put their mobiles in a Yonder pouch, which closes automatically when in the venue and unlocks in the venue's concourse. Dylan has been touring his 2020 album Rough and Rowdy Ways since 2021, playing dates in Glasgow, London and Oxford in 2022. He will perform in Edinburgh's iconic Usher Hall on November the 5th and 6th. The singer is one of the most acclaimed songwriters of all time, winning a Nobel Prize for Literature as well as 10 Grammys, and been nominated on a further 38 occasions. Dylan has had 6 UK top 10 singles and 9 UK number 1 albums. His career began in 1962 with the single Mixed Up Confusion, which failed to chart in the UK and US, but he shot to stardom with a string of successful singles in 1965, including The Times They Are A-Changin', Subterranean Homesick Blues and Like a Rolling Stone. Dylan's songs have been covered by the likes of the Jimi Hendrix Experience, the Rolling Stones and Adele. Dylan's stage time for the Edinburgh concert will be at 7:30pm. Tickets for all shows will go on sale on Friday, July the 19th from 9am. And that report was by Lucy Jackson.
This is from the National on Wednesday the 17th of July, from the news section. Decision date set for Flamingo Land's controversial Loch Lomond plans. This article is written by Xander Eliards. The date has been set for a decision on a controversial application to develop a resort on the banks of Loch Lomond. The theme park, Flamingo Land, is looking to invest some £40 million to develop an extensive section of the famous loch's waterfront, with a monorail, water park, hotel and more than 100 holiday lodges. The first application was withdrawn amid fierce opposition in 2019, with a renewed application being submitted to the Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park Authority in May 2022. Locals in Balloch told the National that they support some aspects of the development, such as the renovation of the ruined Woodbank House, but oppose others, such as the widely panned monorail. The Scottish Greens have campaigned against the Loch Lomond development, with MSP Ross Greer accusing Flamingo Land of wanting to scar this world-famous natural landscape, and a petition against the plans gathering more than 94,000 signatures. However, Jim Patterson, the development director of the project, claimed the Greens were engaging in clickbait politics rather than having a real dialogue about how a development could proceed, adding, "There is simply no way to validate the numbers Greer is quoting, and who the people who clicked his sham petition are or where they live." As controversy around the application continues, the Loch Lomond and the Trossachs National Park Authority Board has agreed that a site visit, public hearing and final decision on the case will take place on Monday, September the 16th. The meetings will take place in public in Balloch, with the Park Authority saying, given the high level of public interest in the application, careful consideration is being given to the arrangements for the hearing. Ahead of the meeting, a report recommending whether the application should be refused or granted will be published by the National Park Authority. A spokesperson said, "This application has not yet been decided. No position has yet been taken in support of or against this planning application. However, With high levels of public interest, we felt it would be useful to set out as early as possible the process for taking a decision. Officers now have all the information required to assess the application, and that assessment will continue between now and September. All submitted documents, consultee responses, and representations from the public are being considered as part of the assessment. Once the assessment phase is concluded, a report will be published that includes a recommendation to board members that they either approve or refuse the application. That report will be published on the National Park Authority website in early September, in advance of the board meeting. Once the report has been published, those who have submitted formal comments on the application will be notified and given details on how they can request to speak at the public hearing. That article was written by Zander Eliads. This is from the National on Wednesday the 17th of July, from the news section. Palestine row breaks out between Scottish Greens and Pride organisers. This article is written by Stuart Patterson. A row has broken out between the Scottish Greens and Pride March organisers over support for Palestine. Greens in Glasgow are calling on supporters to join them in a pro-Palestine section in the annual Pride Parade. The Glasgow Green Party and the Rainbow Greens said they have decided not to march in a green bloc during processions organised by Glasgow's Pride Limited at the event on Saturday. Instead, they will take part in a No Pride in Genocide radical bloc to show solidarity with people of Palestine. The group said it has concerns over reports some of the event organisers' corporate sponsors may have interests and investments that the Greens state make them complicit in the State of Israel's ongoing genocide against the Palestinian people, as well as sponsors who are accelerating the climate crisis. The Pride organisers said the Greens were pulling attention away from the event's original aims towards a separate agenda. In an email chain published by the Greens, Glasgow Pride said they had passed an email asking for details of their corporate sponsors onto Police Scotland. Ellie Gomersall, Glasgow Greens committee member and LGBT+ activist, said, "Pride is first and foremost a protest, and that must always be remembered, even as we rightly celebrate how far our community has come in our fight for liberation. As we continue that fight for our human rights, we must stand in solidarity with all those across the world who are fighting for theirs. There is no conflict between standing for a free Palestine and celebrating our queer identities. For Glasgow's Pride Limited to imply this is disappointing and offensive. The Scottish Greens will always fight for LGBTQ+ people, but that will not stop us from standing with Palestine or fighting the climate crisis. Pride should be about liberation for all, not a celebration of corporations putting a rainbow in their logo." In a reply to the Greens, which the party published, Glasgow's Pride Limited states it stands with those in 65 countries and territories where our community can be jailed or even sentenced to death and killed for being who they are. It said Palestine was one of those places. Glasgow's Pride said it stands with the European Convention of Human Rights, as this is what has provided our community with the freedoms that we can enjoy here in Scotland. We also do not condone any form of war or contravention of the ECHR, be this the Palestine-Israel conflict, which began in 1948, the current ongoing wars involving Russia, Ukraine and Chechnya, or any form of harassment or violence to our community, which can be seen in Scotland by the increase in hate crime reporting. It added, "Any attempt to hijack or disrupt the events will be seen as being against the LGBTQIA+ community, and attempted pinkwashing by distracting attention away from the challenges faced by our community. That article was written by Stuart Patterson. This is from The National on Wednesday the 17th of July, from the news section. Scottish firm invests £9 million in new nanojet technology facility. This article is written by Ross Hunter. A Scottish company has invested nearly £9 million in a new manufacturing facility, creating a significant number of new jobs in the process. Innova Nanojet Technologies, INJT, creates products which use ultrafine water droplets to clean and disinfect indoor air. Their nanojet platform technology is capable of spraying trillions of supersonic droplets to eliminate airborne contaminants using only water. It is able to neutralize pollutants, viruses, and bacteria and does not use any harmful chemicals. After years of research and development, the company has now officially opened its first manufacturing facility in Vale of Leven, West Dunbartonshire. INJT invested almost £9 million in its new operation with Scotland's National Economic Development Agency, Scottish Enterprise, also creating a package of funding and support, including a £1.5 million grant. It's fantastic to see a young, innovative company like Innova Nanojet Technologies invest almost £9 million in Scotland, said Reuben Aitken, Managing Director of International Operations at Scottish Enterprise. Not only will this allow the business to scale quickly, it also means a significant number of new jobs created for local communities over the next few years. Companies like Innova Nanojet Technologies are great examples of Scotland's continuing success at attracting inward investment, with EY's attractiveness survey last week naming Scotland again as the #1 UK location for foreign direct investment projects outside London. Alongside our partners, we'll continue to promote the wealth of business benefits Scotland offers to international companies and investors. The company's technology can be used across a range of industries, including public health, agriculture, food, housing and transportation. It's hoped the filterless air purification technology will be highly attractive to businesses, particularly as more scrutiny is paid to the cleanliness of air in indoor environments in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. 30 years after my graduation from the University of Strathclyde, I'm very thrilled to be back in Scotland to commence the production of our Innova Nanojet Technologies Limited's first commercialisation product that will revolutionise indoor air cleaning and disinfection, which will benefit billions of people in the world, said Dr. Charles Huang, the chairman and CEO of INJT. With Scotland's enterprises' continued support, we look forward to developing and launching more innovative products and solutions for the world. That article was written by Ross Hunter. This is from The National on Wednesday the 17th of July, from the news section. Trump running mate, UK first Islamist country with nuclear weapons. This article is written by Joe Sullivan. Donald Trump's newly appointed running mate has described the UK as an Islamist country with nuclear weapons. J.D. Vance was announced as a Republican pick for Vice President on Monday. His remarks, made during a speech at a Conservative conference last Wednesday, may prove embarrassing to UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy, who had been courting the likely vice presidential nominee in recent weeks. Vance said the assertion resulted from a conversation with a friend, where they were debating what country would be the first truly Islamist country to get a nuclear weapon. He said, Maybe it's Iran, maybe Pakistan, already kinda counts, and then we finally decided it's actually the UK since Labour took over. Former Home Secretary Suella Braverman also spoke at the conference, where she described the state of the Tory party as terrible and attributed its defeat at the general election to Nigel Farage's Reform Party. Angela Rayner has denied Vance's characterisation of the UK, telling Good Morning Britain, "Look, I don't recognise that characterisation. I'm very proud of the election success that Labour had recently. We won votes across all different communities across the whole of the country, and we're interested in governing on behalf of Britain and also working with our international allies." Treasury Minister James Murray told Sky News that he did not know what Vance was talking about. He told Sky News, "I really don't understand those comments. I genuinely heard that comment, and I don't know what he was driving at in that comment, to be honest. I mean, in Britain, we're very proud of our diversity. I'm very proud that we have a new government. I'm very proud that our Labour government is committed to national security and economic growth. I really don't know how that comment fits in." That article was written by Joe Sullivan. This is from The National on Wednesday the 17th of July, from the news section. West Lothian. Elderly man dies in hit and run while crossing street. This article is written by Alistair Ferguson. An elderly man who was injured in a hit-and-run incident with a motorcycle has died in hospital. The 81-year-old was crossing Bathgate Road in Blackburn, West Lothian, while using a walking frame when he was hit by a motorbike at about 7:15 p.m. on Friday. He was taken to Edinburgh Royal Infirmary, but Police Scotland confirmed on Tuesday that he had died. Officers have said they are following a positive line of inquiry as they try to trace the motorcyclist who left their bike and fled the scene. Sergeant Jen Niven from the Forces Road Policing Unit said, "Our thoughts are with the man's family and friends at this difficult time. We are following a positive line of inquiry and would urge anyone with information who has not yet spoken to police to please come forward." That article was written by Alistair Ferguson.
That concludes this week's edition of the National Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Tune Review and to tell your friends about our service.